It's really interesting how, as soon as women begin to dominate a field, suddenly that field becomes less prestigious, less rigorous, less serious, less intellectual. Because that's not random, it's called the reverse Matilda effect. And I previously did a video on this, but we're going to dive a little deeper. So, the Matilda effect describes how women's accomplishments consistently get ignored, minimized, or credited to men, especially in male dominated fields like science, tech, and politics. And the reverse Matilda effect is what happens when a profession becomes associated with women and suddenly society values it a lot less, which is crazy when you actually learn just how many male scientists, authors, inventors, etc. ended up getting credit for work that women originally did and accomplished. So as women move into certain spaces, those spaces start losing status, pay, and recognition. And this is not at all about the quality of the work changing, because it's not. It's about who we, as a culture shaped by patriarchy and white supremacy, have been taught to value and devalue. So let's look at a few examples, shall we? First up is teaching. In the early 1800s, teaching was a male profession. It was considered an intellectual and civic duty, highly respected and fairly compensated. But once women became the majority of teachers, the field's pay and prestige would drop. It shifted from being seen as a scholarly pursuit to basically a caring babysitting job, something women are expected to do out of love, not something that deserves higher pay. There's also healthcare. We see this with nursing, pediatrics, and OBGYNs, all fields that are overwhelmingly dominated by women. They're some of the most essential, emotionally demanding roles in healthcare, and yet they're often seen as softer or less rigorous than male-dominated specialties like cardiology or orthopedics, which are higher paid and more prestigious in the eyes of patriarchy. Veterinary medicine shows this too. It's now about 80% women, but wages haven't kept up with the intensity of the work or the education required for it. And then in writing and media, it's the same story. As more women enter literary spaces, certain genres like young adult fiction, romance, fan fiction, etc., they're dismissed as less serious, even when they're among the most commercially successful genres. When women create art, it's considered niche, and when men create the same thing, it's called universal. Sports have this same pattern too. Cheerleading, gymnastics, figure skating. These are physically demanding, competitive, and incredibly expensive technical sports, but because they're associated with women, they're treated as less real than male-dominated sports like football or basketball. The emphasis shifts from athleticism to appearance, from power to performance. And we see that even with like women's basketball, women's soccer, like it's just seen as less elite. Also in the corporate world, in roles like HR, DEI, other people-centered professions, these are the departments that literally keep companies functioning and accountable. But because they're filled with women, especially women of color, they're labeled as soft, less strategic, less valuable to the bottom line, and therefore paid less and often the first to be cut. The deeper issue here is that under patriarchy, anything associated with women is devalued. Power, intellect, authority, and innovation are all gendered and masculine work, and it's seen as inherently more serious and important. Meanwhile, feminine work, the emotional labor, the community care, the education, the healing, the invisible labor, if you will, is treated as natural and not professional. And when you add white supremacy to that equation, it becomes even more layered because the devaluation of feminized work is also racialized. So domestic work, teaching, caregiving, these have long been associated with women of color, particularly Black and Latina women. So not only is the labor feminized, it's racialized, and that further drives down its social and economic value. It's not just about gender, it's about how our systems assign worth to people's contributions based on proximity to power. White men are historically positioned at the top of that hierarchy. No arguments there. You always have been. So when they dominate a field, the field is seen as elite. And when women, especially women of color, become the face of that field, it's reclassified as supporting work, secondary, replaceable, underpaid. That's why it's really not enough to just get more women into fields, because if the structure itself still defines value through a patriarchal and white supremacist lens, the problem just shifts, it doesn't disappear. We see this in academia too. Studies have shown that when students learn that women are succeeding in certain academic fields like biology or psychology, they actually start to rate those fields as less interesting or less worthy of studying. That's how deep the bias runs. I'm telling you, this is unconscious for a lot of folks. The very presence of women can make a field seem less desirable, not because the work itself has changed at all, but because of the gender makeup changing. And that's the heart of the reverse Matilda effect. It's not about women lowering the quality of work. We know that that's not happening at all. It's about how systems built on patriarchy and white supremacy can't reconcile women's, and especially women of color's, success with the idea of authority, seriousness, and value. And then when we bring in additional layers of intersectionality with disabilities and neurodivergence and other things, it's a whole other question. So it's not just why do women tend to work in lower paying fields, it's why do fields lose pay and prestige once women dominate them? Because the pattern is really clear. When men enter a profession, pay and respect go up. When women enter it, both seem to go down. It's not a coincidence that's patriarchy doing exactly what it's designed to do: preserve male dominance by controlling where power, respect, and money flow. And the fix isn't just representation, it's redefinition. We have to redefine what we see as valuable labor. We have to stop treating teaching emotional intelligence and community work as extras and start recognizing them as the foundation of every functioning society. Because until we do, the leak in the pipeline doesn't just drain women out of opportunity, it drains our collective progress as well too. Until next time, y'all.